as you can see,
Sorry, I just stopped recording.
No problem. I got it. So you can see in the plan, and I'm not intended to read the whole document to you. I really would like to just kind of go through it. I'm going to ask those committee chairs that supplied their goals to talk about their goals, just quickly give us a snapshot so we can get through it. And then if we have time, we want to regress a little bit and talk a little more detail. But let's not get into wordsmithing tonight or this and that. Let's just look at the overall kind of content of where we're at and how it's all going to fit together. Because folks, there's still a lot of work to do here. So as you can see, I've just taken the liberty to call it a 3-year plan. We go through 2025. Now, strategic plans, sometimes they're a year long, sometimes they're 5 years long, sometimes they're 6 years long. I've just, because we're a relatively new organization, had put it at 3 years. And we can talk about that later, whether that's too long or too short, or we want to go longer. But again, with our organization fairly new, but we have a mission and vision adopted, it's imperative now that we develop these strategies and high-level goals that support that vision and mission, right? That's what it's all about. That's how you connect the dot to vision and mission. That's why vision and mission is so important to any organization. It should drive every decision that we make. I've referenced the plan reflects community response from our 2019 community survey, our monthly community meetings. Our board members are active in the community, talking with community members. We get feedback. We talk about it monthly. We talk about it at these types of meetings. So that's just a general description of kind of what's helping us drive this. And hopefully ASU will come through and we'll get some of that feedback, and then we'll be able to share it with the community and get their feedback and review. But I think, you know, generally I feel fairly confident that with our survey, the comments we've seen from the public over the years, general feedback from ASU, that we've got a pretty good understanding of where we're at in the community and where our organization needs to go. So I'll just stop right there with plan and purpose to just see, anyone have any just general off the cuff comment on that? Everyone good?
Yes.
Okay. So next would be community profile. And as you can see, this is something that needs to be worked on. And it's basically just kind of a summary of our community. And I've just started with Gold Canyon's unincorporated community of approximately 12,000 residents. The community is, and I was really hopeful that maybe Roberto and Dave, or one or the other, or both, or Dick, someone that's been in the community longer, may be able to take that task on and give us a quick summary. You can shoot it to me on an email of just kind of the basic community profile. It just kind of a good opening for people that read the plan. What's our community about? Where are we? So on and so forth. Okay. So when we get the mission and vision, now I know there was a little discussion about that earlier, but I just want to remind everybody, these were adopted by us. And the mission statement, again, is about who we are, what we do, what we're currently doing. It's kind of us, right? That's the mission, our mission. That's what we're after. And then the vision is, where do we want to be? Where are we going? How do we support that mission through our vision? So that's another discussion that I think we need to have about, you know, are those still solid? Do we need some tweaking? I think I saw Isabel had suggested a few comments here last month when she was out of the country, and there was a few comments. I honestly don't know whether anyone's tuned that up any differently for us to discuss, But at some point in time, I think sooner than later, and maybe we have a little discussion Saturday about the mission and vision, and should it be revised? Should it be tweaked? Does it still represent where we're at? So I'll stop there for a minute and just see, is there any comment about mission and vision, just in general? Want to spend a minute and take a look at those?
Yeah, and let me emphasize that we gave a lot of thought to the mission and vision when we put it together. Nonetheless, we are evolving and feel reluctant to make any suggestion, but be prepared that there will be deep commitment to the original language.
I have a question from your experience with strategic planning. Maybe it makes sense that we go through the strategic planning process. So we come up with a plan and then go back and bounce that against the mission and vision to ensure that the strategic plan either matches those, or do we need to tweak it to match the strategic plan? So, you know, it's a chicken and the egg type of thing, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And
Typically, you would develop your mission and vision. They're solid in themselves, and everything you do under that would support those rather than vice versa. Of course, Dave, we need to test them as and maybe we can do that as we go through where we're at with our goals and our vision, or goals in our strategic planning initiatives. But typically you would identify your mission and vision. If it's solid, then the document below would support those.
And let me interject that this is really an exercise, and I'm repeating myself, for blue sky thinking. This is the strategic plan as an opportunity to reach for the stars, if you will. And through the discussion process and strategic planning, my experience is it can be very intense, and it should be a very intense process. And indeed, in other organizations with which I've done strategic planning, just the idea of putting together a work plan, if you will, it's delegated to a strategic planning committee to help the facilitator expand on that. But the process, expect that it's going to be very intense, and I would encourage those who are not present that they be invited to devote time, because really the product needs to be reflective of every single board members and the other participants, be reflective of what they are blue skying. And so, Steve, thank you very much for leading us through this process. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're welcome. And Roberto, you and I have talked about it for a while, and you're right on. And if you recall the email that I originally sent out about asking for these aspirational goals, I think my comment was, shoot for the stars, folks. Those aspirational goals should be so far out there. That's what gets us forward thinking. That's really what it's all about. It's just not a common goal. We should really be reaching out there. And when we go over the goals here in a minute, I'm going to ask each of the committee chairs to talk about their goal, and we can talk about that a little bit, because that's really the crux of those goals. Aspirational goals, again, support the mission and vision, and that's how we get there. And then there's those high-level strategies or objectives to support those goals. And then there's the work plan, the work plan tasks that then accomplish those strategies that support those goals, that support that vision and mission. So I just want to ask, with the mission and vision, Roberto, others, does anyone have a thought on how we should or when we should spend some quality time tuning that up or reviewing that? How is that something 2 or 3 board members would like to do and bring it back to us, or should that be at a full board level? What do you all think?
Well, I think Dave made a very good suggestion that we go through this process that you're leading us through, Steve, and then go back and look at the mission and vision. And really, again, it really demands participation by each board member to ensure that this is a collective judgment that we've exercised to ensure as much as we can that it is the epitome of the best thinking of the board.
Maybe what we should do is ask we do have a lot of new board members now, is ask the new board members to go back and look at this and give us your input on it. Maybe that would be something we could ask all our new board, because they didn't have much of an input or any input in the development. So now's a chance to get a collaborative look at it. And
Great idea.
First set of eyes is good. So.
Yep, great idea, Dave.
I reiterate the idea of we sort of begin to think about it, but let's not seriously revisit it until we're later in the strategic planning process to bring that to bear.
But I think what I'm saying is we should ask the new board members to give it some thought and give us some, be prepared to give us some feedback the next time we talk about it. Because your opinion is valuable.
It's valuable.
Yeah.
We demand it of you. And what Dick and I have tried to do in the nominating process is to elicit from the people that we've interacted with, elicit from them their response to the mission statement and the vision statement that each of you has already looked at. But I agree that there should be more of an intense review of it by new members to make sure that they're comfortable and that it may stimulate other ideas that perhaps were not included in the previous iteration. Proceed, Steve.
Okay, let's go to organizational values. So again, these organizational values are organization values. It's what we fall back to on how we operate, what's important to us in decision-making and representing the community. And we've got some really good feedback. I think we'll get some more, and I don't think I've missed anything here. If I have from folks, I apologize. But we had connectivity, honesty, preservation, transparency, sustainable, and research minded. And then we had respect for and support responsive to all Gold Cane residents, right? Identify and collaborate with all neighboring stakeholders. Employ idealism, creativity, and innovation in promoting the community's quality of life in education, health, safety, economic vitality, adequate infrastructure, and protection of the area's unique environment. So if anyone else has, and again, like Dave and Roberto had said, we have some new board members and we'll get their feedback. Any other really strong personal values that our organization should be representing, just go ahead and pass them on. I would just ask any of you to pass on any comment, anything you've got via an email to me, and I'll get it in our next draft. So any comment on organizational values or anything reach out to anybody here? Any glowing thing missing that folks would like me to add right now?
This is Sandy.
Hi, Sandy.
I was wondering about the Health and Human Services, that if that is covered in one of these other bullet points that you have here.
That's a great question. Let's see, creativity, community quality of life, education, health and safety. So I think that last one, touches on it, but we clearly could get something a little clearer on that. What would you think it would look like, Sandy? How would you word that?
Well, I would think about somehow, I don't know about wording it, but some resource so that, and we've been talking about it a little bit, about folks that need in-home care and things like that. And so maybe a resource so that we can connect up people with things that are near that people can avail themselves of.
Okay, so, okay. Yeah. So it's more like support people's needs, something like that. Is that
right? And help. I know in our, as you know, we've had a real hard time with my husband and his health, and
right?
Connecting up with folks that can give us the services that we need. And I'm now getting some okays to give to us, from Mobile One Doc, on if they would allow us to use their name as a resource. And we use them, and they come to the house, and it's really very, very convenient. So I'm just wondering if there are other services that are needed in our community that we could connect people up with.
Okay, perfect. I will add something to that around people's needs and services and support of folks.
Okay,
Excellent. Anyone else have any just general comment?
Yeah, and that was brought up actually at the last meeting.
Yeah.
When we were around at our own immediate board members and the families, the need, and to remind people out there in the community who may be living alone that, hey, if you need help, if you need support, we are here and we can connect you. Keeping in mind that there is one commercial home that has been here for several years in Golden Canyon, but that's about the only assisted living facility that I know of. So thank you, Sandy, for underscoring that.
Okay, you're welcome.
That's kind of weather observation. Sorry, Sandy, didn't know you were going.
No, that's all right. You're all right. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Charlie.
Scenery and view shed. Yeah, you could kind of say it relates to preservation and sustainability, but it seems to be such a key value here.
What is it, Charlie? I can't hear you really well. What was it?
I was saying scenery and view sheds are such an extreme value here. And I don't think you don't quite get at it by just saying preservation, and we can have the debate preservation, conservation, as we have in SALT, and we've been back and forth. Sustainability, that relates, but it's not it.
So,
Okay.
maybe we could split the preservation point up, preservation A, scenery and view sheds, B, blah, 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 C, water, which is an interesting one, right? I mean, so I would probably, I don't know, I would probably suggest to keep the organizational values relatively general. More general than going into specific details, you know, because the specific details, I think there's room in other passages of that plan. That's kind of my feeling for this. But I like the point you're making, you know, hey, I'm all for view sheds, and you know, that's really important for us. Yep.
But this wasn't as a substitute.
As a substitute for what?
I wasn't substituting it for preservation.
No,
I'm
you
saying
weren't,
I
yeah,
think
I
it
know.
has value.
I think
Yeah.
defining these will hopefully further in the document, will expand on some of these. I would
That's
would
kind
assume,
of what I'm,
yeah.
that's what I'm trying to say, yeah.
Yeah, and I think actually, Charlie, when we get down to your goal and some of your strategies and objectives, you hit on that again. I think I've captured that from the info you got me, but I've written that note down, so we'll see where that one ends up. I appreciate that for sure.
And
Fairly,
this is Sandy. In addition to that, I think that we talk about the dark sky ordinance, and I know when I was county supervisor, our attorneys would say it's very hard to write an ordinance that excludes all light, you know, and so it comes mostly in how you zone, what you require of people and the lighting. And there's ways to light that's not invasive of our view shed. And I don't know where that would belong, or if that's already included in the, when we talk about being the view shed as a whole. But that is something that's very, very important, the lighting of the dark sky, and making sure that we don't take away that view at night.
Yes.
Absolutely. And Sandy, you'll see that here in a minute in Isabel's comments.
Excellent.
You'll see that. She definitely highlights that for sure.
Good deal.
So-
Sidetrack, Steve.
Yeah.
Not to side this, but at Wednesday's Board of Supervisors meeting, the dark skies issue is going to surface with respect to the church here on Kings Ranch Road and their LED lighting sign.
Mhm.
Right.
And hopefully at the end of the session, and I don't want to detract from the time that you need, Steve, but hopefully at the end of this session, we can spend a few minutes because there's some interesting developments that I ran into today with respect to that agenda item on Wednesday.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Steve.
Okay, so now we go to what I call, or what's called, environmental scan. Some call it the SWOT analysis, strengths, opportunities, weakness, and threats. And I've just put what, half a dozen of them down. It needs work, and what it's really intended to be, it's to identify, again, just a quick snapshot of what in community and outside community influences affect us, or we need to be aware of in our decision making. Where kind of are we internally, and what's influencing us externally as well internally? So I just quickly wrote, you know, we're an unincorporated community. Whether that's good or bad, I haven't even said, but it's an issue that is part of the environment. It's part of our environment. It's part of where we're at, right? The AJ annexation, just always, since I've been around for 12 years, and most of you have been around a lot longer, it's always kind of in this black cloud over there. Where is that? What's going on? And I've taken the liberty to say a lack of good, sound planning practices. We're a growing community, for sure we're growing. Our community is growing and the surrounding areas are growing. So again, that's just an example of, so how does that affect our decision-making in our strategic planning efforts. We have a lack of community services. Sandy talked about some of them. Our survey talked about them: retail, health, social services. So that's something that we need to be aware of. And we're now starting to talk more and more about high traffic volumes. So unfortunately, the ones I've written there are pretty much things we need to be aware of, more on the negative side. So we need to get some positives in there. Like, we've got a beautiful scenic community. The community appreciates the wilderness, things like that. So again, this is another almost internal project that we can talk about as a group, or if 2 or 3 folks want to grab it and help expand on the environmental scan. It doesn't need to be an exhaustive list, but just a good snapshot for any of our readers that read the plan can get an idea of what are those issues that are in the back of our mind as we're making our decisions. Okay, fair enough?
Yes.
Any comment there on it, on the scan? Any quick comment I can write down to get on there now?
Nope. Go ahead.
You good?
Good.
Okay, so let's talk about organizational goals. And again, I've gotten these in a number of different ways, and I've just taken the liberty to kind of load it up as I saw what people had sent. Some came from last month's committee report to the board. Some were directly written to me as a goal. But I want to just ask each of the chairs here to just talk a little bit about their goal. And again, these are those goals that should be shooting for the stars. This should be out there, way out there, our ultimate dream, if you will, and that'll push us then to develop strategies, objectives that help us reach that goal. So Charlie, I'll start with you.
You used the wording pretty much, I think, that I sent you and that we've used a lot. And I think that thought that conservation of the open space between Gold Canyon and the wilderness area in particular, little nebulous about just how far south it has to be, but retaining this predominant open space environment is crucial to retaining the character of Gold Canyon. That is reaching for the stars.
Yeah.
Not many communities locally or around the country manage to achieve that. Most of the time, development ruins much of what people come to an area for. At the same time, it's just one quick comment. I think when we get too absolutist, sometimes, as Sandy has told me many times, back when they had one of the initiatives to the state to try to change the Constitution relative to conservation of state trust land, that some conservation organizations pushed a little hard. As a result, they got nothing. We have to know when to compromise and how much we can get away with compromising, and it's difficult. There's no perfect crystal ball in any case. I think the way it's said there is quite aspirational. Though there may be better wording someone came up with. But
Charlie, do you think we should just, if we're going to really shoot up there high, should it say conservation of all of the open space? Even though we know that's probably a far reach, but should that be that high level aspirational, all of the open or all of the buffer, or how else would you describe that?
I think tying it to protecting the view sheds in the functional ecosystem probably is what we need, rather than getting arbitrary on geography.
Okay.
That is to the proper geography. And again, we want to be aspirational, but at some point we have to be realistic and take the best deal we can get, or we'll get nothing.
Okay.
Hey, Charlie.
Yeah.
Charlie, I'm just thinking here. So we talk about preserving these spaces and everything. Have you been involved in any discussions about protection of them from fire and that? When I went to the Arizona Trail Summit, there was a big discussion on how they're going to design trails in the future and where they should build because of our changing world climate. And I've seen Central Oregon, whole communities burned to the ground and beautiful wild space, and the sequoias are being threatened right now. Is there a fire protection plan for this area? And should we have one for our community?
It's actually being developed, I think, quite responsive from many of you at least have heard. I don't know that most of the rest of you are participating. Supervisor Sturdy has put together, gee, we must have now done about 6 of them every quarter. I think we caught something like the Public Land Managers Meeting. And it's really trying to pull together the various agencies, BLM, Forest Service, State Land, Bureau of Rec on the chains of lakes, all the county, including the Sheriff's Office. And there's quite a bit of emphasis on fire protection, firefighting. And that group, in fact, is even getting some grants and doing work at present around Apache Junction to try to get protected corridors.
Yeah, see,
And while still retaining as much of nature as you can.
our HOA is going through our community right now and doing preventative trimming, clearing, and all that.
What HOA are you in?
Superstition Foothills.
Well, you are actually a Firewise community, if I remember correctly.
Yep.
And,
The only one in the area.
and that is something that we explored about a year ago, is forming a group to go through that process to get Gold Canyon designated, which opens up grants and other funding for
That needs to
community
be
to
in
do that.
there.
But the thing is, Adobe just announced that they have formed a fire safety group to do that. So I think we all let them do it.
We ought to, but it
Yeah,
ought to be
yeah.
part of our community plan as a goal and objective. And
Well, this is our community plan. They may have some, but anyways, we should work together.
right.
And towards that end, I talked with Roberto about this, that, as an effort to an olive branch to Adobe, we wrote a letter to Adobe saying, hey, great, we were thinking about this a year ago, but actually the person that was spearheading it had some family issues, so she backed away. Nobody else picked up the ball, so we dropped it. They picked it up, and they've got Surdy and Connie involved, and they got a whole group working on it. So basically, we said, great, we'll support whatever way we can on that. So I think we ought to work with Adobe on that, and like I said, we had one of our community meetings was designated to that. We had a gentleman from that Department of Forestry come and give a presentation on that whole process. So we're aware of it. We thought about it. It didn't happen, but somebody is working it, and I think we need to be supportive of
Yeah,
that. So,
regardless of who the
Yeah, yeah,
performing
yeah,
org
yeah.
is, it ought to be part of our strategic plan, I think, right?
Yeah. And there are 125 Firewise sites in the state of Arizona
Yeah.
that are already
and I believe yours
established.
is, because I remember one of our original board members was from there. I can't remember his name now. Phil Corcoran. Phil Corcoran. Yeah,
He's in Superstition Mountain.
it's not the same thing.
No.
Oh, okay.
Superstition Foothills.
Well, the Superstition Mountain, the golf course, they went through the process and they're designated.
Our community's doing it right
Oh,
now.
good. Yeah.
So
And there are economic benefits
Oh, yeah.
to residents for their insurance.
Insurance purposes. Yeah.
Mhm.
They just did a substantial cleanup of the wash and
Yeah.
area behind our home.
Yeah.
And,
But part of that program is you could go in the undeveloped area between us and the wilderness. You know, we can work with the Tonto National Forest or whatever to put a buffer between
Right.
us and like in Entrada del Oro and Peralta Trails. Put a buffer that's right there by the desert to protect those communities.
You know, as I'm scanning all of these preservation documents, I came across a couple of county issued recommendations where they're saying that grazing is actually a rather effective way of fire prevention. And we have all these
Reducing
grazing
fuel.
leases, so that's a huge argument for us to keep the grazing leases and not turn
Right.
this land into developed areas.
manage it.
For that matter.
So you don't overgraze.
Yeah,
and
Yeah,
turn it
yeah,
into a
yeah,
big
yeah,
group.
yeah, of course, of course, of course.
Okay,
But of
Steve,
course, it makes the point that, like everything else, you need balance, because you obliterating all the washes, vegetation in the washes is a great way to prevent fires.
You like
Also,
moonscapes.
Get rid of, and much of the reason we.
Yeah.
Okay, let's-
yeah,
Let's not beat the.
Yeah.
Okay.
so
That's a good.
clear,
It's being worked.
That's
This
one-
is Sandy. One of the things that's available in talking about the ranchers and grazing is they pay a fee to the state land for the grazing rights. Conservation leasing is quite a bit more money, or at least it used to be. If we could work with our elected officials to get the conservation leasing down to more like the grazing leases, so that they could work together and put on the same land, put conservation and grazing together. And then that way that would preserve it for those two uses. Because the grazing folks know that they can't graze around houses. So they would want to keep that land so that they can have grazing. So I don't know where those laws are right now, but I think would be really good to look at, and maybe Charlie knows a little bit more about what a conservation lease costs. I mean, how much we would have to pay for that. But you put those two together, state land would have perpetual money. And so just a thought.
yeah, so
Yep.
Steve, organizational
Are you
goals
looking-
clearly
Are you looking into that?
involves Firewise.
Let's talk.
Yeah. I'll get it in there somewhere. I got a note. We'll get it in there somewhere for sure.
Go ahead.
Okay, we'll move to transportation and safety. And you know, I know Jerry's not here, and I emailed him a little bit ago, but I'll get back to him. So I just pulled out some of Jerry's info, like I said, from his last committee report, I think, to the board. But this is a good example, I think. So what I pulled out of Jerry's, what I got out of it was this positive relationships with local and state federal transportation agencies to obtain transportation funding for broader support for Gold Canyon. So in my opinion, I'll talk to Jerry about it. This really represents a strategy that would support that aspirational goal, which that aspirational goal would be more like have the most progressive intermodal transportation system community in the state of Arizona or something like that. But Jerry, right now we're at this relationship with transportation funding. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'll talk with him a little bit more about getting a little broader goal related to more of a comprehensive transportation goal. Okay.
Steve, just a question. When we talk safety, here you're talking transportation safety. Do we need something in here about law enforcement?
We probably do somewhere along the line, Dale. And I can't remember if you hit on it on some of your objectives that I pulled out of what you sent me or not, but I'll write down law enforcement somewhere.
Because I've talked with the sheriffs on some of my jaunts around here and they, they always say, I got 450 square miles of territory to cover and I'm up on Cloudview and some parking, and, but maybe
Right.
that'll value and a goal in our community plan too is how do we ensure community safety from a law enforcement crime, criminal activity? And we've had incidents lately. It seems like we're getting increasing incidents. And as population increases, it's going to get worse. And we're an unincorporated community here. So we depend on the sheriff's department. So I think we need to somehow factor that into here too.
So Dale, it's a great comment and the fire comment. And I was remiss, I'm not saying right now, we've got our organizational goals. They're just basically based on our 7 committees. And they don't have to be just those committees. That's just where we started because that's kind of where we're at and what we've been working on. But surely if we've got additional goals like public safety that might involve Firewise, we surely can add another goal or 2 or 3 that don't necessarily have to connect directly to a committee, but would connect to the organization. So keep that in mind. Again, I just use kind of where we're at with our 7 committees, but we surely can expand that with community goals. Okay.
Justifiably should be included in here, then you form a committee to address it if it's that important.
Well,
Right.
also,
Anyway.
well, also remember, a lot of this structure, our committee structure was based on the survey data.
Right.
And the public safety issue was, down the list.
Right.
So that's a function
Yeah.
of that. So,
Just blue sky.
yeah, I agree.
No, it's a great comment and it's for everybody. If anyone else has any larger aspirational goals, I know Dick had talked about water and I responded, water kind of falls under that preservation now, environment preservation. But if that falls into a bigger category of utility infrastructure goal, we surely can expand that. So don't get locked in right now because this is very preliminary, folks, just with the 7 goals, because I thought that was a good starting spot because everyone has a great understanding of where they're at with each of those goals and how we're advancing those. So we'll go to public relations and community engagement. And I got some comment from June. So June, I'll let you take a look at this. I've done some editing and ad-libbing, and I think I've heard right that June, are you like trying to be the committee chair of this? You and Dave, is that right? I want to make sure I've got that right.
Yeah, so I'm fine with that. And I'm hoping that it will work for our first meeting where we're going to have free coffee and donuts sponsored by a realtor and baked by Jen, who's going to be taking over the Waffle Line Inn.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll have some people. I posted it on Facebook and have been telling all of my clients and friends to please show up for this coming Saturday's 9 a.m. meeting here.
Oh, great.
So
Good. So what this one says again is actively in June, if you want to revise it, feel free, actively engage, aspirational goal again, folks, actively engage and encourage all Gold Cane residents to become involved with GCCi monthly community meetings by promoting GCCi activities, projects throughout the community using all available media outlets.
Could we change that to say and strike monthly and just say community meetings? Because
Absolutely.
give opportunities to have, just instead of one meeting a month, as we grow,
Mhm.
our committees sometimes have their own meetings that we invite the public to, so.
As we're doing today.
Yeah.
Yep. Perfect. And again, anyone has any comments on their goals or anything, just feel free to send me an email, Steve, add this, delete that. I think we should consider that. And I'll continue to advance it, and then we'll do another review. So we'll go to government relations. Roberto sent this to me. I appreciate it. Roberto, you want to talk about that for a minute?
Yeah, I'll read you what I sent in, and I'm not suggesting there's any difference. But the strategic goal for GCCi's government relations team, which includes all board of directors and supportive community members, is to develop and maintain a constructive working relationship with all levels of government, local, county, state, and federal, inclusive of elected and appointed public officials and their support staff. And there's going to be some overlapping with some of the other aspirations, but hopefully this government relations unit will try to ensure that it's a collaborative effort and that it's coordinated. So there may be overlapping, but it's consistent in the goal that's being pursued. Thank you, Steve.
Any comment or question of Roberto? So it's a great goal.
Well, I think the overlap that Roberta's talking about is, like, if we want to explore this conservation lease thing, which means we have to get into government stuff, then the committee that's working on that can kind of work with the relations people. Say, okay, who do we talk to? You know, what's the best way to do it? So it's a way to form connections.
Yeah, and we've already been involved in a couple of instances, for example, with the Queen Valley residents who had some concerns about safety out there. And it was within the jurisdiction of the Corps of Engineers, that particular issue. They were talking about the Whitlow Dam and the shooting of firearms out there.
40 millimeter.
Yeah, so it's some heavy duty shooting. So yeah, there'll be overlapping.
Okay.
Go ahead, Steve.
Okay, community planning. Develop a comprehensive community planning document promoting smart, sustainable, environmentally sensitive development that represents the uniqueness of Gold Canyon.
Thank you for including the environmentally sensitive development. I would have insisted on that. But how does the community planning point differ from the strategic planning that we're doing?
So again, when we get to our strategies and objectives below, they should represent what are the key pieces or strategies that help us reach that goal. And in my case, one of those strategies is develop a broad-based community planning group to advance the initiative that you'll see below, right?
Isn't this where the ASU study would fit in?
Well, it would if we had it. It might say develop and implement the ASU study that promotes, but I just took the liberty to keep it high level, broad based. The ASU study may end up, depending on what it looks like, it may end up being a strategy or a single objective that helps support that overriding goal. because it's not going to hit on all of those issues. It'll be a piece of what will help us reach that high level goal.
Yeah, and it'll hopefully provide the skeleton by which we reach the blue sky objectives.
Right, exactly. Okay. So Dale, I'll let you go to 6 here, my friend, and I've taken the liberty based on what you sent me to ramp it up one here. So here you go, big guy.
What we really want to do is when we want to have a resource available to our community residents where they understand the connectivity of all the trails and our bike paths and all that here, so that when they have visitors in town, they can have a resource available to say, hey, if you want to hike up to the Turbine up here, here's how you get there, and here's the trail system, and here's how we get there. Walking paths, connectivity between the different communities, the different HOAs and everything. Safety is a part of this too, and I really am concerned about that. Probably the biggest input I've got from, and I do a lot of interviews as I'm riding around, walking around and everything, is people fear for their safety on our bike paths and roadways around here, walkers and bikers and everything, fear, and have had to jump off the road and everything too. So I just think a resource, and they have one up in Superior, and I got to go up and meet with the mayor up there and find out how they developed that. They have a trail map for that community that's excellent. They had one in Cottonwood too, and they're excellent resources to where if you want to take your family, friends, or yourself out for a stroll, it's all laid out right there. It takes a lot of effort. You have to go survey all the trails and then get a GIS expert to put it all together in a map, and it's very eligible for one of the state grants, that kind of thing. Problem with all state grants is most of them take some matching funds, and I'm not sure how we're going to deal with that. Although you can provide matching fund equivalent by volunteerism.
Right.
So we'll figure all that out. But the goal is to have basically a plot plan of where you can go and have outdoor activities in our community.
Yeah, along that line, when I lived in San Francisco, which is really a challenging place to both hike and bike, the city produced a bicycle map that laid out the recommended bicycle paths and the elevation and gradations that you would be encountering and the distances, so that you could really plan on a family or group activity without overstressing anybody that wasn't up to
You can
that.
fit it to your group.
Yeah.
See,
So,
where I'm from, the Eastern Washington, our community, you can go into any bike shop, any outdoor shop, and they have those maps available for you. It's a great resource, and that's what we want to get to here.
And you have those if you go into Phoenix.
Yeah.
They've got all that stuff.
For
Yeah.
the canal trail
Right,
and all
right.
that, yeah,
Yeah.
and I found those.
Yeah.
We have one for Superstition Foothills.
Okay.
We have not a bike map, but a trail map. There's a
Right.
series of trails in there. We have a map.
Right.
We have that in Peralta Trails. I can actually send it to you if you don't have it.
Yeah,
Okay.
that would be great.
All we need to do is
They
connect.
get something, get a resource to integrate
Yes.
those.
Okay.
very good.
One of
Go ahead.
one of the keys there is when you look at, again, this high level aspirational goal, develop the most comprehensive biking, hiking, walking, pedestrian, safety orientated now connectivity plan in the county. So I just threw it in the county. So we want to be known in Pinal County as the most bike pedestrian friendly community in the county. So that's shooting for the stars. It could say in the state of Washington, but that's how we need to be thinking about these goals. That's something we want to be known for, right? And that's And then Dale will develop these strategies that help us reach that goal.
Why not
Isabel,
have,
oh, go ahead, Dave. I'm sorry.
I say, we could have trails that connect us with Silly Mountain and Apache Junction
AJ.
and the other way to Queen Valley. Because there are a lot of roads and stuff between, you know, Front de Laurel and Queen Valley that, you know, could be mapped out.
And I thought AJ was working on plans for one from AJ out to Superstition
Well,
Boulevard.
I think they're planning something along from Silly Mountain along the BLM land
Right.
to do a trail system through there. So we could link up with that. Yeah.
And up to the new regional park, right?
Ah, yeah.
And maybe, you know, how to get from Peralta Trails to the regional park, not using Peralta Road. There are trails there. They're just not very developed.
Yeah, I've talked with the county about the plans for the regional park development.
Uh-huh.
And there are going to be road improvements from the elementary school in Peralta out to that.
Right.
Don't include any shoulder allowance or bike trails or anything like that. It does include some straightening, and I think they're going to chip seal it or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it's still not a pedestrian or bike friendly road. the way
Right,
it
right.
is. So, and I've talked to Ken about that
Yeah.
There's so
several
many
times.
issues with off-road vehicles throughout on both sides of the road.
Yeah.
And fencing it much tighter than the part they did a few years ago. You drive the area that's got the fencing. It's obvious what the result is of not getting the fencing close enough. But there is a series of technically not legal trails, but I think most people aren't too worried about the bike trails. It's the damage done by all the off-road vehicle that's ruining the resource.
Although the state is taking a really careful look at e-bikes,
Hmm.
because they're basically electric motorcycles in their mind,
Yeah.
and the damage they think they're gonna do to the trails. And I'm not sure I buy it, but that is,
Well-
we had breakout sessions on that, actually.
So Steve, I have one thing. Where's water?
It's coming. It's coming. It's down. You'll see it. It's coming. So let's go to Isabel and the environmental preservation goal.
Okay, Stephen, now I've heard your encouragement to really reach for the stars. And with that, I think I want to revise my rather tame statement here. But what I'm really trying, you know, what my vision is let's preserve this semi-rural character. Let's preserve the dark skies. You know, we're working on that, as you know. I am very concerned about the surrounding lands, the surrounding Sonoran desert lands, wildlife corridors, wildlife biodiversity, that kind of stuff. So I'd really like to get my hands on that and put my foot down that this is not going to be asphalted over. Hearing you encourage us to reach higher, I would like to include that I have this vision of Gold Canyon of this environmentally aware community where everybody is saving water, where people invest in systems that use gray water, rainwater collection, all of that kind of stuff. So I would love to see Gold Canyon adopt this philosophy and become the environmentally sensitive community in the county.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect.
Can't reach for the stuff.
That's an
That'll be
excellent
your
point.
motto. Bumper sticker.
Exactly, that is the bumper sticker.
That's a
Yeah.
good tagline.
That
It
really
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
Yes. Can you write that down?
I am now ready.
To bring something to write with.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for that, for sure. And I know you were in Italy when you wrote this, and you sent it back right in response. You probably had a bottle of wine in front of you, so now you can
Very proud.
digress and go back to it. Awesome.
Okay,
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so we've been at it for an hour and 15 minutes. How's everyone doing? I think we should just roll quickly through the objective strategies and not spend a whole lot of time, because frankly, I think there's some work to be done here, and I'll be sending out some additional emails. But again, it's just kind of based on some of that feedback I've gotten. I've kind of picked and choose. So I'll start with Charlie. Go ahead.
Sorry, I'm rereading it. I did read it this afternoon.
Anything to change or update?
Yeah, I think that's a good start. Like you say, it's.
Yeah.
And it's a living document. We'll try to look at that.
So Dave, will you go back up to Charlie's just quickly? So this is just a good one. So if you remember, Charlie's goal was preservation of the open space between the wilderness in Gold Canyon to preserve the watershed and the ecosystem. So now you would look at what are those strategies, high-level strategies, not necessarily buying 10 acres of property here or there. That's a work plan objective, but it would be the strategy is protection of all the watersheds or view sheds and the ecosystem. The strategy is to preserve that is nature and watershed friendly development. So again, I'm just trying to reinforce how we're trying to connect those dots on how those objectives or strategies support that aspirational goal. Okay, we can go to transportation, Dave. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time with Jerry because again, this came off his last month's report. But Jerry now, and I've just picked up, a lot of it is about supporting. And again, if we want the most intermodal transportation system in the county, whatever that goal ends up being, well, again, a good strategy will be to support the half-cent sales tax initiative, right? That's a specific strategy. You know, and the work plan of Jerry's may be develop a community group that does sign waving for that tax initiative. Okay, so that's the difference in the three. So Jerry talks about some of just their ongoing work that are more work plan related. Committee safety will work with GCCi to look at the needs and safety program. They'll continue to request county funding, right? We'll work the Pinal County Partnership. We're actively involved in an ADOT 5-year plan. Those are work plan objectives, not necessarily high-level strategies necessarily. Quarterly meetings will be held, submit enhancements. We'll stop there. So public relations, June, I took this comment, just one, and we probably need a little more feedback, and I'll reach out to you, June. So just that overall kind of objective would be to develop a comprehensive community outreach and communications plan that reaches all Gold Canyon residents. That's a very specific strategy to meet that high-level goal that everyone in Gold Canyon should know who we are and what we're all about, right? June, you have any comment there at all?
We've got our work cut out for us.
And again, folks, we're probably at the maybe 20% level. So we're going to go over this many, many more times and fill in many, many more blanks. So I don't want anyone to feel like they haven't done enough, or because there's plenty coming. And Roberto, I think, has reflected that well. It takes all of us to be involved, all of us to comment, all of us to push back, challenge. That's how we'll reach success with the plan. So governmental relations, Roberto, I just put the X's there. Maybe you want to talk about a little bit about some of those real strategies about that, or you can just feed me that and we can review those in the next generation of our review.
I'll feed it to you.
Okay, cool. So community planning. So I've just got 3 now. Establish a community planning team that represents a broad base of community interests. So that's my first strategy that again would support my goal of a comprehensive plan for smart, environmentally sensitive growth. My first strategy would be to get a community plan and team together that will help advance that. My second strategy would be to complete the community planning document that represents the citizens. So that's a specific strategy that supports that. And then a strategy then is the adoption of the plan by the Board of Supervisors. So I have work to do there too, but those are three pretty high level strategies that support that overall community planning goal. Okay,
This
Dale,
is,
I pulled this again from what you had sent me. I did some editing and I took out some of your, I think, basic kind of daily tasks that you're talking about, but I'll let you talk a little bit about some of this.
I already kind of talked about this, Steve. I think this is good the way it is right now.
Okay, so he's got grant funding, trail map, new trails, pedestrian and bicycle safety, and then to pull the users of trails and bike lanes for their input. So those are key strategies that help support that ultimate goal.
Right.
Okay, Isabel.
Yeah, so I was just brainstorming there. Okay, so forgive me that this sounds like just out of my head because it was, but it kind of summarizes what I would like to see. So the first one is let's minimize residential development here, because I remember how last year there was the scare that there would be industrial development, and this is how I actually got involved with this, because I really couldn't see that. And then, you know, we're looking into the residential development, and I'd really like to keep that very minimal, because the goal is really preservation. Okay, so preservation of open space and preservation of the desert. So absolutely no industrial development, and this needs to be rephrased, obviously. Okay, so please forgive me for brainstorming like this. If there is residential development, I'm hoping that we could somehow adopt for Gold Canyon a set of ordinances in the likes of what North Scottsdale has. They have what is called an ESLO, Environmentally Sensitive Lands Ordinance, and it's an entire set that basically prescribes what you can and what you cannot do in terms of building. And it talks about large buffer zones, it talks about the preservation of washes and so on. And if you've ever driven up there, you know that it looks pretty because why? Because it's embedded in the natural environment. So, you know, if we have a development here, I'd like to see the adoption of something like that.
When you say no industrial, you mean light industry or anything? Nothing.
Nothing.
Flat out nothing.
Nope.
I want to have a building and assemble watches.
What do you mean?
That's a light industry.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
we need to
you know.
define industrial. That's all I'm
Yeah,
saying. We
industrial,
need
to me, industrial is when you have like
smokestacks,
a
cooling towers.
that of course too, but every big box, you know, that would
A
complete.
big box store.
Yeah, no big box stores, no big manufacturers, that kind of thing. Does that make sense? That's what I mean by industrial. Now, if there's a small, you know, mechanic garage or something, you know, that's a different,
Okay.
you know, small business is fine, but nothing on a large scale.
Okay.
Let's see what else. The ESLO, we had that. Yeah, I would, if you know, if I had it my way, we would negotiate with the county a special protected status for Gold Canyon. Now, since we are unincorporated, we are kind of at the whim of the county, and I would kind of like to see, you know, some type of protection. You know, like, can we get them to see how special this is here? Yes, so that's a special tax district with which things are being financed, but I'd like some formal acknowledgement of the special status of Gold Canyon. If
We
that's,
could incorporate, that wouldn't give us a special tax.
you know what, I think we should revisit that, quite frankly. When's the last time we talked about incorporation? It was like 20 years ago?
No.
Mhm.
No, I'm the chairman.
I know. Yes,
campaigns.
yes, yes,
And you have the bruises to show it.
yeah. How long is that ago?
I'm sorry,
How long was that ago?
maybe 15 years or so.
15 years. Do you think that the population has changed in the meantime?
Probably be more against it than for it.
Well, part of the problem with that is if you say no industry,
Mhm,
I mean, you can't have a town
mhm,
without some kind of tax base. And you can't do it just on rooftops.
mhm. Well, let's have
So-
the industry south of US 60. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be doable. I'd be okay with that.
Well,
Well, it
If there were
needs,
buffer zones.
yeah, it needs really some solid back and forth discussion.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we're talking blue sky.
Right.
but I think,
Let's not put any.
I think what you're
limitations.
talking about, the county will come back and say, well, we already have our comprehensive plan. But the problem with that is anytime a developer comes in,
Mhm.
they come into the county and want this changed and that
Mhm.
changed. So what we really want to say is, okay, let's nail down something.
Exactly.
So when a
For Gold
developer
Canyon.
comes in, they
Exactly.
know up front what the community wants.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
let's
That's
not monkey
precisely,
around with it.
so if we can't incorporate, at least get some commitment that
Right.
we have some protection here.
And is that what the ESLO would do?
Yes and no. Actually, yes, it would. It depends on, it's a set of ordinances. It depends on what you include in the set. Okay. But the major intention of these ordinances is to build in harmony with the environment. Okay. But it also includes architectural interests such as let's not have like a white and neon green a building at the side of the road. Okay, so let's all have like sand and
Yeah.
brown, that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So and it says don't build above 2 stories, that kind of stuff. Yeah, sure, exactly, exactly.
Okay.
Just how high-
Yeah, that's great.
And even roof slope.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay,
All right.
Go ahead, Steve.
So I need to read letter E for Mr. Richards that sent me this. And I think it fits in nicely with environment and preservation. Gold Canyon Community Inc. will be the organization the community listens to with respect to water issues and how they affect the community and surrounding areas. So in my opinion, that is a very good strategy objective to help the environment preservation goal. So thank you for that, Dick. I appreciate it. And we got it on the map now.
Yeah, thank you. It's right at the end. That's, we can go home now. I just, we're doing the conservation thing now. And this is just one part of it. I get kind of comments from people that I think, too big and it's not community oriented. We have to be aware of the big picture. The big picture is going to be here forever. Water is going to be a topic for long after I'm gone here. And we have to be aware of that. And that's no easy task because there's all kinds of things that are coming up that we should be aware of that will at some point, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but in the next, and certainly the next 3 years and on, we need to be aware of the big picture. And that's going to take some doing.
I think we almost need a stronger word than listens to. I don't know the answer because my partner listens to me, but she doesn't always do it. So I'm joking, but I'm serious too. I mean, we almost need a stronger word than
Yeah,
listens.
I think the entire thing needs to be a little rephrased.
And I don't know where to go with it
Yeah.
yet.
We'll do that, but we'll give water and the dark skies like a larger, larger prominence.
Isabel, if I want to put in a rainwater collection cistern, our HOA would probably say, no, you're not
They
doing
wouldn't
it.
have to know. I wouldn't have to know about it. Let's see, but this is the kind of discussion that we need to have.
Right, okay, all right.
So the last part of the plan that will come later, we'll have discussion on that later as we advance the primary meat of it, is the implementation and the work plan when I talked about. So that would be specific work plan items that support our strategies and our goals. Purchase the 40 acres north of Superstition Golf Course Resort. That would be a specific work plan item, right? Develop a trail from Peralta Trails, Peralta Canyon to the regional park. That's a specific work plan item. So we'll talk about that later. We all already have a list of some work plan items that we're working on. And then performance measures are obviously very important. We'll have some high level performance measures. So on an annual basis, as a minimum, we can gauge, are we advancing these initiatives, and why are we not advancing those initiatives based on some of those performance measurements. So I will begin to work on putting together some preliminary performance measures for us, maybe for our next discussion. And then, of course, I will write a close to the document on, the close and where we're at and where we're going. So that'll wrap that up tonight. Anyone have any other comments? I think Roberto wanted to talk about another initiative, if I remember right, but how's everyone feeling? I should just ask. Does everyone feel pretty good about where we're at and have a pretty good understanding of where we want to go?
This is Sandy. I think the document is wonderful. What you've done is you're working on the positives. Here's what we want. For every negative, there's a positive. There's something that we can say, and you've done a very good job of that. And
Thank
so I really like the way it is presented. And in regards to specifics, that you can have a design review committee that gives information to the Board of Supervisors on what is wanted in an area.
Right.
As well as you can have overlay so that certain things in an area are specific in addition to zoning. Here is what is needed, whether it be lot sizes or whatever. So there's some things, I don't know how the law is right now, if they've changed any, but they can help us decide how do you get to some of these goals. But I love the way it's put in a positive manner.
Thank you. It was great work by everybody for sure.
Yes, they've done a great job.
Yep. Anyone else? General comment?
We want to have a schedule, to keep this thing moving, to have a deadline when we need to get something back to you and have another meeting.
Yeah. Dave, let me give that some thought based on some of the comment here, and I'll just coordinate that with you, and I will shoot out a global email kind of everybody asking for some additional general feedback specific to their area of interest, and we'll see if we can't just get a little bit further. And I actually, and as I've thought about it, I kind of like the idea David brought up, Roberto kind of reinforced it. We can let our new members look at our vision and mission, because we never want to lose touch with that, and get some general feedback from them. And then we can finish this document and see if we need to really tweak that vision and mission. But I think it would be important for our new members to at least get it in front of them to see if they have any initial feedback on it. So I'll be getting something out. As a minimum, I'm thinking in the next month, we probably need to do this again to have another special meeting with everybody as this thing matures a little bit more.
Did everybody get a copy of this? I think I sent it out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And for sure, if you have any comment or feedback specific to what we got or questions, just send them to me. I think Isabel's going to tune up her goal. If others want to, Roberto's going to send me some of his strategies under government relations. feel free to send me any feedback and I'll get it in and then we can all digest it the next time we get together.
Cool.
Excellent.
Let's go.
All right.
Great meeting.
You on the community relations stuff?
Yeah, is that it, Steve?
That's it for me, Roberto. I don't know if you wanted to talk about, I think you mentioned another initiative or not. I don't know, but we're what, an hour and a half into it. So
Yeah, no, this is an entirely separate item. Does anybody else have anything to feed to Steve? Okay, tomorrow or Wednesday, the Board of Supervisors is having a public hearing on the center stage outdoor sign here on Kings Ranch Road. This afternoon, I was able to pin down that the application submitted by the center stage received a unanimous disapproval recommendation from the sign committee. However, the director, Mr. Billingsley, went counter to that, and he is recommending approval. I plan to speak hearing on behalf of GCCi, but I need to get direction from the board what position we should take, keeping in mind that the Citizens Committee that recommended unanimously disapproval did it on the basis that the applicant is proposing a sign that is outside of the standards for size that is already used by the county. Counter to that, though, is when we had our meeting at the church, the pastor pointed out that he would abide by whatever standards the county wanted to impose. And Charlie participated in that discussion as well. And the pastor pointed out that while they've invested $5,000 or so in the sign that they want to
No,
use,
it's more than that,
50.
50.
50,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Once in a while, those zeros. But that the lighting that would be produced would be less than the present sign that is already in place. So what is the thought from the board?
Well,
And is there anything on shielding?
No.
I'm sorry.
Let's see.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead, David, and then Charles.
anyways, I took the initiative on MailChimp. They have a feature called surveys. And I don't know, I think I've spread it out to the board. So I put it out to our email list. It's running 3-1 against out there based on our email list. So
I had a comment.
Yeah,
Is any-
Charlie had asked.
Yeah, that's good. I want to hear something that Dale's going to say after a while too. Is there any comments about shielding? What bothers me about it is that and is this going to be a final vote or this is just a work session?
this is a final.
No, this is a public hearing where approval or disapproval.
I'd certainly like to know what wattage wavelengths. Dale had some comments in our discussion about that. I'm bothered that people are rushing to judgment and just shooting from the hip. Because you could do a lot with shielding and We probably got brighter lights. I think we had that conversation before, didn't we?
Yeah. So I'll go back to my original comment. Have any of you guys seen that sign in operation?
Yes,
Not in operation.
when it was in Apache Junction.
I haven't. I'm not gonna vote, and I, on your survey thing, I put no opinion at this
Yeah.
time. I'm not gonna vote based on a motion or something. I propose that we have a demo phase, we set the thing up, and we have to run a SO cord out to it or something.
Yeah.
And we look at it he said he could vary the brightness of it. We talk about the hours. I wanna see it before I render an opinion. There's 300 houses around here that are more obnoxious to me probably than this sign,
Well, and
from a dark skies
and
perspective.
the
Okay,
thing, and
including
the-
mine when I leave my blinds open.
But I proposed initially a demo period. And we just let them set it up and we look at it. Then we make an informed decision on whether we think that's acceptable or
And I think
Well, that's-
someone ought to go around with a light meter and compare it with some of the other things that emit light.
well, remember, he said that if they can't use the LED light, they're gonna go back to the original sign, which uses fluorescent, which is brighter than that sign. So to me, it's a net loss,
not.
but
I do feel better about making a decision now when Roberto mentioned that it exceeds a county standard for size requirement. Okay, so that's a data point. They should abide by the county standard for sizes.
but the standard has not been updated for these type of, I mean, that's what they meant, that
Yeah.
it hasn't been updated in 20 years. So, because LED lights aren't even in their standard.
But he said it was size, right?
But yeah, they're focusing on the sign and it's two-sided.
And it's two-sided.
But
It's
another
moving,
counter
right?
is total light.
Moving,
It's like,
Yes, 8 seconds is the.
It's a scrolling word.
it's awful, I'm sorry, it's just.
I'm one that votes no, just in period. I mean, if you're gonna have that sign there, why not put one in front of Gold Canyon United Methodist Church? Why not put them in front of all the churches?
once you set a precedent.
Yeah, set a
And
precedent.
I'm trying,
I'm for
I
that,
haven't
for
decided
against
I
it
want to
100%.
do that.
And that's a lot of the feedback from the people out there. Once you let the cat out of the bag, there you go.
Then how do you deny a future? Yeah, wants to do
But
it.
I
And
keep
then
going
next-
back to, they're gonna use that fluorescent light thing. That's even more light. So from a dark skies thing, that's.
And
not
are you saying
acceptable.
that it's okay by the current regulation?
It meets the
Yeah.
standards.
It's
Yeah.
part of the standard. Although it's two-sided. So how does it get away with that?
So,
But it's
so
not
the
as
total
large.
amount of light emitted by the sign, regardless of size, ought to be a factor.
Right, right. And he said he could dial down
Yeah.
they could vary the light that it is, the intensity of the light that it.
But I really like the idea that Dale started and we haven't revisited. We should have.
Yeah, I think the
Other-
pastor should have done that, should have fired up that one and the old one and let people see the
And they
difference.
said they would do that. I remember discussions of that, right?
Yeah.
And that never happened.
Well, I think the reason why it kind of died was Steve brought up that Pinal County was revisiting the dark sky standard, right? Steve,
Yeah.
are you there?
Yeah, and I think my original
Okay.
comment on this was, and Dave just clarified it, is I don't think we should be making any decision until the county updates their sign ordinance. Why cherry pick this one and then the next one? The church can survive. Let's just push the county to update their ordinance so everyone's on the same playing field. And if this sign fits in their new ordinance, so be it. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Let it be. I mean, let's get the
I like-
policy in place before we start substituting additional options. That's how I would proceed with it. Update your ordinance, folks.
Yeah.
You're gonna get more and more of these requests.
But we need to have him put on Pinellas County's revised ordinance too.
Well, yeah, that would be the public hearing process, not whether this sign fits or not. It's a much bigger issue that needs to be resolved before we just say, oh yeah, this one will be okay.
And one other piece would be, and I don't know if the current rules have it, we've got quiet ordinance in most subdivisions. and it stops at say 10 o'clock in
10,
our case, I
yeah,
think.
10 in our
And you
case.
can do the same kind of thing that you can have it on up till X time.
Yeah, their application is to have it on until 11 PM and have it dark from 11 until 7 AM.
That's a stipulation, that's in there. So,
11 to 10.
so anyways, from,
Now,
What do you think, Sandy? You're muted. You're muted.
Yeah, I was looking it up to see. We had some issues with one of the churches out here in Gold Canyon when I was in the county supervisor's office. And what it was is they're exempt from some things. And I think we need to look into that, because what they said they didn't have to do was if we did the design review ordinance, that we couldn't really tell them some of the things that we were trying to say, such as color, such as height, such things like that. Now, whether or not it is the law now, I mean, bigger than zoning law, but the attorneys would say whether or not that there might be an issue with them being a little exempt. I mean, we don't have to say that in a public meeting.
Right.
First of all, we don't want to give them an idea that they might be, you know, so anyway, but that is something to look at. I was just looking it up on Google to see if they fall under different laws, especially during the zoning process.
so do we have agreement then that I request Jeff Surdy to move to table it until all of the questions have been resolved?
and the ordinance updated?
Yeah.
Ordinance
Yeah,
updated as part of that.
all of what's been mentioned here.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah, I think that's,
and you may want to mention the, you know, the wide opposition from the residents' side.
I do think that one of the things too is, I believe it was Charlie said, you know, we should also be looking at how that the light stays right there, doesn't go on to other properties. The shielding, we might get what we want, and what we want, we might not want, only if it is worse than, you know, so like they said, if they have a sign now, can we make one that's better? So
Right.
I'd like that, to be able to look at that. I'd never thought about that before, seeing how it radiates, like they have one at Walgreens. They have a sign that's lit that says, "Welcome to Walgreens," and different things like that. So I was just, what some of them look like differently.
The liquor store across the street from there puts out a lot of light too. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I believe there's a current ordinance that says the light has to fall on your property. It cannot go out off of it, but that's only probably on the ground, not in visual.
Yeah, and the application that they submitted abided by that it would be to the jurisdiction line of the property.
Mhm.
Okay,
So is there any refinement to what we're discussing? So we've got agreement that asked Jeff Surdy to have the hearing tabled.
Yes.
Okay.
Dinner time.
Wanna go home?
I sure do. So it's dinner time, wine time, and martini time.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
guys.
Steve.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
something one of you said. I was wanting to make the comment about